Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good day, ma'am and my friend. We are from Group 1. We will present our material about the history of psycholinguistics, which consists of myself, Indah, as the moderator, and my friend, Tiara, restine, and Muhammad Suki. The first material will be delivered by myself. Psycholinguistics was published and popular in 1954 in the book Thomas A. Book and Charles A. Scott entitled Psycholinguistics, a survey of theory and research problems. Formally, psycholinguistics emerged with the opening of a special program on psycholinguistics in 1953 by R. Brown. At the beginning of the formation of psycholinguistics, there were several experts who contributed to the development of psycholinguistics, namely expert by psychology in linguistics and expert by linguistics in psychology. And the next point is psychology in linguistics. Some linguistic experts who study psychology, namely Van Humboldt, Ferdinand de Saussure, Edward Sapir, Leonard Bloomfield, and other Jespersen. They are linguists from Germany who compare the grammar of different languages with the character of the speaker. Van Humboldt, influenced by the law of rationalism, considered that language is classified as in the opinion of empirism. Ferdinand de Saussure introduced three important terms in linguistics, namely language, and parole. And Edward Sapir examines the relationship between language and talk. And the next point is some psychologists who study linguistics, namely John Dewey, Corbusier, Wundt, Watson, and Weiss. Corbusier, German national psychologist who wrote a book called Speech Theory, 1934. One German psychologist who first developed the mentalistic theory of language. Watson, which equates language behavior with behaviors such as eating, walking, and other activities. Weiss acknowledged the mentality in language. And any expert who contribute the development of psycholinguistics such as Leslie, Lynchburg, Osgood, Skinner, Chomsky, and Miller, they are experts who are instrumental in the development and advancement of psycholinguistics. In this period, Miller that language is not only about meaning, but also about the human ability to regulate the rules or meaning in usable sentence. And the last point is psycholinguistic studies are increasingly developing in the cognitive direction, and generative grammar was born by Chomsky, which is a new innovation in this field.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I will tell you about psycholinguistics as a discipline. George Miller said that psycholinguists have long recognized that the brain accepts linguistic symbol and linguistic claim that a kind of psychosocial motor drive grammar and lexical. The main task of the psycholinguist is to analyze the psychological process when humans use sentence. Language is a very complex human ability, therefore psycholinguistics need to research the ability to determine what and how language works. Psycholinguists can also solve the problem that language is not a matter of where meaning, reference, and habit, but it's about the ability to set new terms and sentences. The development of linguistics, which was originally oriented only to flow behaviorism, then turned to mentalism in 1957, which had been many makes psycholinguistics a science that isn't great the main person. Well, this grew out of Chomsky's view of universality of language that leads to the acquisition of language. Even this strategy has been supported by a development neurolinguistic and bilingualistic discipline. And next slide. At the stage of psycholinguistics theory, psycholinguistics no wonder stands as a separate science from other science because the acquisition and use of human language in many other branches of science so that in the end psycholinguistics no longer consists of psycho and linguistic, but also the operation of various other disciplines such as neurology, philosophy, primatology, and genetic. And then language experts like Chomsky and Lindbergh explain that the growth and the development of a person's language will be genetically related to their biological development. Lindbergh said that humans have a special ability to acquire language that does not exist in animal. The reason is number one, the presence of a special center in the brain for language, and then number two, the development of a baby language is the same. The difficulties experienced prevent language development. Number four, language cannot be taught to other creatures, and the last but not least, all language have the same part. In psycholinguistics, there are three generations of psycholinguistics, namely the first generation psycholinguistic is psycholinguistic with expert writing article entitled Psycholinguistics, a survey of theory and research problem edited by Carles Osgood and Thomas Sebeka. Their point of view is closely related to neo-behaviorism or behaviorism. This theory identify language as a system of direct and indirect responses to verbal or non-verbal stimuli. The stimulus response orientation or action reaction or stimulus or response is a psychological oriented. Three weaknesses in the theory of the first generation. First, language is not considered a human action. Second, psycholinguistic is atomistic, and the third, psycholinguistic is individualistic. Second generation psycholinguistic, whose main psycholinguistic characters are Noam Chomsky and George Miller. The second generation of psycholinguistic argues that in the process of language, it is not the grains of language that are obtained, it is the rule and system of the rules that are obtained. The third generation psycholinguistic are as follow. First, we know that their orientation to psychology but not behavioral psychology. Their detachment from the framework of sentence psycholinguistic and involvement in psycholinguistic based on situation and context. And then there is a shift from an analysis of abstract speech process or perceptions to a psychological analysis of communication and thought. I think that's all that I to tell you. Next will be presented by my friend.
Psycholinguistic and pragmatic. Psycholinguistic was famous about 2 countries ago and is now increasingly popular throughout the world. Everything in language is a psychological. Language is a tool for generating truth. As discipline, psycholinguistics is born three generations, namely the first, second, and third generation. With their own characteristic, semantic examine the meaning in natural language by not taking into account the context, while pragmatic examine the meaning in the interaction between speaker and listener. Pragmatic is not a component from the language, but rather pragmatic, which give perspective to language. Pragmatic examine the meaning into interaction between speaker and listener. In this case, pragmatic knowledge help the psycholinguistic studies, especially in communication.
I think that's all from our group about history of psycholinguistics. Thank you for your attention. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.